Maritato, military historical artist. Thank you for watching this video. And what I am working on here is the beginnings of a painting that is commissioned privately. The painting depicts Colonel Haldimand S. Putnam leading the second wave attack into Fort Wagner, South Carolina on July 18th, 1863. This would be the second wave assault after the first wave led by Brigadier General George C. Strong's brigade, which was famously depicted in the movie Glory. If you have seen the movie Glory, you will know that at the end of the movie, the final battle that they depict is the Battle of Fort Wagner, which was led famously by the all-black 54th Massachusetts Infantry. The depiction of this battle is beautifully, beautifully done. It is one of my favorite movies about the Civil War ever made, and was actually the movie that got me interested in the Civil War when I was a teenager. So what led to the inspiration for this painting was the client who is commissioning it had commissioned me for a previous painting, and he is also a collector of original Civil War artifacts, and he had come into the possession of the original sword that was owned by Colonel Putnam, and it is the exact same sword that Colonel Putnam had with him during the assault on Fort Wagner. Unfortunately, Colonel Putnam was killed in this assault. Because the battle was fought at nighttime, and because Putnam was leading the second assault, the second wave quickly became disorganized when it reached the fort. Men were falling left and right by the dozens. It was described as being pitch black during the assault, and it was very difficult to make out who was the enemy and who wasn't. What made matters worse was once the units under Putnam reached the fort, they became entangled with soldiers from the units in the first wave who had been wounded or were dying, and it became quickly very confusing to know who was commanding who. We do know, however, that Colonel Putnam did make it to the parapet of the fort, but by this time things were so disorganized and Confederate resistance was so strong, it was almost impossible to move further. It was here where Colonel Putnam encountered Major Lewis Butler of the 67th Ohio. Major Butler wrote that he and Putnam were conversing near the top of the parapet to try to figure out a strategy on how to move the assault forward. While Butler and Putnam were conversing, Putnam was struck in the head by a Confederate bullet and killed instantly. He dropped dead right in front of Butler. Miraculously, Colonel Putnam's sword was recovered after the battle by a Confederate soldier. Colonel Putnam was dressed in a private's sack coat with no rank insignia. The only thing that he had with him to denote that he was an officer was his sword and possibly his trousers. Of course, I regard this as an absolute honor to depict a unsung, little-known hero of the Civil War and be able to bring his story to light. So what I'm doing here is I've taken the concept sketch that the client has reviewed and approved and enlarged it to the size of the actual canvas and printed it out on the largest pieces of paper that I could print out. What I'm doing is I'm pasting together the individual printouts so that the entire drawing will be the size of the canvas I'm going to be transferring this onto. The final canvas size is going to be 24 inches tall by 36 inches wide. So I need to make sure that this sketch that I'm creating is the same size of the canvas, because what I'm going to do next is I'm going to take a piece of transfer paper, put it in between the printout and the drawing, and essentially just trace over the drawing so that the drawing easily transfers to the canvas and gives me a good rough guide to follow when I actually start painting onto the canvas. So once I have my initial concept sketch done, I take that drawing and scan it into Adobe Photoshop and develop the concept even further to as close to what I'm envisioning the final painting should look like as I can possibly get it. So what you're seeing me do here is I'm putting the drawing onto the canvas with the charcoal underlay underneath it. It's a transfer paper that has charcoal on it on one side. So when I trace over the drawing, it'll imprint that drawing onto the canvas. I'm taping it into place so it doesn't move. So what I'm doing here is I'm beginning to trace the actual drawing onto the canvas. I'm using a red ballpoint pen with a book underneath the canvas so that it helps to impress the drawing onto the canvas, and also with the red pen I could see what areas I've already traced over. I'm only going to show a portion of this for the sake of time, but you basically get the idea of what I'm doing here. By the way, folks, if you enjoy this video, please consider giving it a like and subscribe to the channel, and also hitting the bell notification button, as well as giving a comment if you would like. All of that helps our channel out and helps me to bring more of this type of content to you. Thank you. Okay, folks, so for the sake of time, I've cut the tracing part down short, and I've cut right to the finished drawing. So I'm taking the drawing and the charcoal transfer paper overlay off of the canvas now to see the drawing that is been transferred to the canvas. So this is the finished drawing on the canvas. It's meant to give me a basic guide as a framework for where I can begin painting. So here, with the drawing finally transferred onto the canvas, I can now begin the actual painting process. What you're seeing me do here is I am beginning what's called an underpainting in acrylic paints. I'm using black acrylic paints, so I'm basically reinforcing the drawing that I had traced onto here, which will basically become the underpainting. You'll notice in the background I have the overlay that I had on the canvas next to me that I kind of refer to as a guide, just so I know where I've put things, because sometimes certain things get left out of the transfer process, so it's good to have the guide to kind of look back and see what I might have missed if I missed something. One of the goals that I wanted to achieve with this painting, because it was a depiction of the Battle of Fort Wagner, was to make this painting an homage to one of my absolute favorite painters, the artist Tom Lovell. Tom Lovell has long passed away. However, he did an amazing depiction of the Battle of Fort Wagner, with Colonel Robert Gould Shaw leading the 54th Massachusetts Infantry into the fort. It is a really, really dramatic painting, very well painted, and is one of my favorite Civil War battle paintings ever made. What I wanted to do with this painting was to honor Tom Lovell by having my composition be an homage to his painting on the Battle of Fort Wagner. So you'll see that I have almost pretty much the same point of view, and I even have a couple of soldiers in some of the same positions that he had in his painting. Again, just as my homage honoring the greatness of Mr. Lovell as a fine art painter of history. So I don't normally use black to start off a painting with, and because this is the first nighttime subject painting that I have ever painted, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to establish the darkest areas of the painting first, which you will see as this underdrawing develops. It'll eventually get darker and darker. So what I'm going to do is start with a dark toned underpainting and then start bringing lighter tones and details out from the darkness in order to give the viewer the feeling that you are looking at a nighttime scene. Again, a lot of the participants in the battle described the night as being basically pitch black. There was some storms in the area, so the sky, I believe, might have been a little bit lighter due to some cloud cover, but for the most part it was dark. And as an artist, what I'm going to be trying to do is to try to show a scene that is a nighttime scene and try to bring out details from a scene which is basically based in a pitch black environment. So this is going to be a pretty big challenge for me, which I'm really actually kind of excited about, because it's the first time I've ever actually done a painting like this where I'm not doing something that's in daylight or sunlight. So definitely will be an exciting painting, and also will give me the opportunity to use a lot of colors that I don't normally use in a painting, like a lot of oranges from the muzzle flashes of cannons and muskets that will also be illuminating the scene. So there's going to be a lot of oranges and blues and dark blues in this painting. A lot of shadowy type figures because it is nighttime. You just don't see the same type of details that you do during the day. So this video will only be the beginning phase of this painting, which is the underpainting. Because it takes many months to create a painting of this size, I have to film these videos in chunks. So basically that's what I'm doing here. As the painting develops, I will be filming every single portion of it so that you can see how this painting develops from a drawing to a fully realized full color oil painting. Alright folks, I'm going to let the video play with limited comments from here on out. But again, if you enjoy this video, please like and subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. Thank you. So right here I'm working on a wounded sergeant of the 54th Massachusetts Infantry who was part of the first wave assault before Putnam's brigade went in. I'm showing this man as a wounded sergeant crawling back to his line, or back to the Union lines rather. And again, you have to remember that a lot of these units were mixed up, and by the time Putnam's brigade got into this area, you would still have wounded and dead from the 1st Brigade in basically littering the ground and occupying the area still. In the foreground area here, I'm going to have dead Union soldiers laying right next to dead Confederate soldiers. This war was a bloody mess and a lot of close fighting in some cases. So, especially in this case where you had Union and Confederate soldiers pretty much fighting in close proximity to each other, changing ground, a lot of their dead would be laying right next to each other. by the way, folks, if you have any questions about any of my work or about my painting methods or about anything basically having to do with my artwork, drop a question in the comments section and I will do my best to answer them. So this figure that I'm working on here is a soldier of the 76th Pennsylvania Infantry. They were also known as the Keystone Zouaves. A Zouave is a soldier that is part of the Army. They were both in the Confederate and the Union armies, but they were more prevalent in the Union Army because their uniforms were different. Their uniforms were inspired by the French North African Turco tribe that the French quelled. I believe it was just before the Napoleonic era that the French adopted the Zouave uniform, which included baggy pants and a fez and a very elaborately decorated jacket with a design called a tombeau. And Zouave uniforms were usually very colorful, incorporating a lot of red, yellow, and sometimes even some crazy colors like green and oranges and things like that. Very, very flamboyant uniform, but really when it boils down to it, a Zouave soldier was basically the same type of soldier as the regular federal infantry soldier in the Union Army. And of course, I was happy to have the opportunity to paint a couple of Zouaves in this painting. Even though it's a nighttime scene and you're really not going to see many colors on them, it was pretty cool to show a different uniform from the regular Federal Army uniform in this particular painting. One thing I wanted to mention also was the attack of Fort Wagner that was depicted in the movie Glory shows the attack happening in the wrong direction. So when you watch the movie, you'll see that it looks like the assaulting column is attacking the fort from the north with the Atlantic Ocean over their left shoulders. But in actuality and in real history, the attacking columns were attacking from the south with the Atlantic Ocean on their right side or over their right side of their shoulders. So you will see that in this painting, I have the Atlantic Ocean showing over their right shoulders, which is the correct orientation of the Atlantic Ocean. Also, you will notice in the background of this painting, on the horizon of the ocean, I am putting some Union naval ships because there was a very heavy naval bombardment that preceded this attack for days before this battle occurred. at this phase, you could see that the underpainting is getting close to being finished. So very soon I'm going to start adding a dark blue wash over the entire painting. It's a dark blue wash of acrylic paint, which will establish an overall tone that will be part of the underpainting and will show through later as I work in with the oils on top of this layer. So what I'm doing here with the blue tape is I'm just reinforcing the horizon line of the ocean so that I make sure that it's nice and straight looking and it doesn't look crooked or anything like that. Because something as simple as the horizon line of the ocean, if it's not perfectly straight, can throw off the entire painting. So I'm just making sure that the horizon line looks correct here. Okay, so what I'm doing here now is adding that dark blue wash over the entire painting. The camera, for some reason, is not picking up the actual darkness of this layer. It actually appears much darker in real life than the camera is showing to you here. But what I will do is I will put a photo at the end of the video to show you exactly what it looks like, and you can get an idea of how dark this blue layer is. It's a mixture of dark blue paint and black together so that I could give it that overall blue feeling for a nighttime scene. And here is the final underpainting. Thank you so much for watching this video. Again, please like, share, and subscribe. I will see you in the next one. Thank you very much.